Israel has long relied on a specific model of warfare. This model involves swift, decisive military actions. The goal was to achieve a quick victory and limit casualties. This strategy often involved surprise attacks and bold maneuvers. Israel's military successes were often followed by calls for major power intervention. This pattern worked well for decades. However, the current conflict is proving to be very different. Historically, Israel has depended on the support of powerful allies. Before 1928, Great Britain provided crucial assistance. In recent times, the United States has emerged as Israel's main backer. This support has taken many forms. The US has provided direct military aid, shared intelligence, and offered diplomatic cover. This backing has been essential for Israel's security. However, the current situation presents new challenges to this long-standing alliance. The ongoing conflict has exposed the limitations of Israel's traditional approach. The conflict has dragged on for far longer than expected. This has put a significant strain on Israel's military and its people. The conflict has also raised questions about the sustainability of Israel's reliance on external support. The international community is increasingly calling for a negotiated settlement. The situation in Israel is complex and constantly evolving. The country faces an uncertain future. The outcome of the current conflict will have far-reaching consequences for Israel, its neighbors, and the wider world. The current conflict is unlike any Israel has faced before. It is a war of attrition. The enemy is not a conventional army. Instead, Israel is facing highly motivated and well-armed non-state actors. These groups, such as Hamas and Hezbollah, operate differently than traditional militaries. They are embedded within civilian populations. This makes it very difficult for Israel to target them without causing civilian casualties. Hamas, which controls the Gaza Strip, has fought under a tight siege. Despite this, it has managed to inflict significant damage on Israel. Hezbollah, based in Lebanon, has also demonstrated its capabilities. It has fired thousands of rockets into Israel. These groups have shown remarkable resilience. They have withstood massive Israeli bombardments. Their arsenals are constantly being replenished. This conflict has challenged Israel's military doctrine. In the past, Israel sought to achieve quick and decisive victories. However, the current enemies are not easily defeated. They are willing to fight a long and costly war. This has forced Israel to adapt its tactics. It has had to rely more heavily on air power and artillery. This has inevitably led to higher civilian casualties. The changing nature of warfare has had a profound impact on Israel. The country is facing a new and dangerous reality. The old rules no longer apply. Israel must find new ways to defend itself against these evolving threats. The prolonged conflict is taking a heavy toll on Israeli society. The constant threat of violence has created a pervasive sense of anxiety and fear. Many Israelis are suffering from psychological trauma. The impact on mental health is being felt across all segments of society. The situation is particularly acute in the south of the country. This is where the majority of rocket attacks occur. Reports indicate that a staggering 96% of Israeli families are psychologically devastated. This statistic highlights the widespread nature of the trauma. The constant fear and uncertainty are taking their toll. Many Israelis report experiencing symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, including flashbacks, nightmares, and hypervigilance. The psychological impact of the conflict extends beyond the immediate victims of violence. The constant state of alert is exhausting. It is affecting the daily lives of millions of Israelis. People are afraid to go out in public. Children are afraid to go to school. The fabric of society is being strained. The psychological wounds of this conflict will take years to heal. The Israeli government is facing a major challenge. It must provide adequate mental health services to its citizens. Failure to do so will have long-term consequences for Israeli society. The prolonged conflict has also exposed a critical weakness in Israel's military, the reserve system. The Israeli military relies heavily on reservists. These are civilians who are called up for duty in times of war. The reserve system has been a cornerstone of Israel's defense posture for decades. However, the current conflict has pushed the system to its breaking point. The reserve system was designed for short, decisive wars. Reservists were expected to serve for a few weeks or months at most. However, the current conflict has dragged on for far longer. Many reservists have been called up for multiple deployments. Some have spent more than 100 days on active duty. This has placed a tremendous strain on reservists and their families. As a result, there has been a sharp decline in morale among reservists. Many are refusing to serve. They argue that they have already sacrificed enough. They are also questioning the government's handling of the conflict. This discontent within the ranks is unprecedented. It is a sign of the deep divisions within Israeli society. The crisis in the reserve system is a major challenge for the Israeli government. It is unclear how long the government can continue to rely on reservists. If the conflict continues, the government may have to consider other options. These include extending compulsory military service or even deploying conscripts to the front lines. Section 5. The erosion of Israeli society. The ongoing conflict is not only a military crisis but also a societal one. It's tearing at the very fabric of Israeli society. The country is becoming increasingly polarized. Trust in institutions is declining. There's a growing sense of disillusionment and despair. The conflict is also having a devastating impact on Israel's economy. One of the most worrying trends is the decline in intellectual and technological capacity. Israel has long prided itself on being a startup nation. The country has produced a disproportionate number of successful tech companies. However, the conflict is diverting resources and attention away from innovation. A recent tender for drone technology submitted to all companies in Israel received no viable responses. This is a stark illustration of the problem. The best and brightest minds are no longer focused on developing cutting-edge technologies. They are preoccupied with the war effort or trying to cope with the psychological impact of the conflict. The conflict is also undermining Israel's social cohesion. The country has always been a melting pot of different cultures and religions. However, the war is exacerbating existing tensions. There has been a rise in hate crimes and discrimination. The social fabric is fraying. Section 6. A nation at war with itself. Israel is increasingly a nation at war with itself. The deep divisions within society are becoming more apparent. The conflict has exposed fundamental disagreements about Israel's identity, its values, and its future. These divisions are evident in the political arena, in the media, and on the streets. The political right is pushing for a more aggressive military response. They believe that Israel must crush its enemies and assert its dominance. They see no room for compromise or negotiation. The left, on the other hand, is calling for a negotiated settlement. They believe that violence only begets more violence. They are deeply concerned about the moral implications of the conflict. The media is also sharply divided. Right-wing newspapers and television channels are beating the drums of war. They accuse the left of being weak and defeatist. Left-wing media outlets are more critical of the government's handling of the conflict. They highlight the civilian casualties and the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. These divisions are tearing Israeli society apart. The conflict is not only a threat to Israel's physical security, but also to its soul. Section 7. International efforts for a ceasefire. As the conflict drags on, international pressure is mounting for a ceasefire. Various countries and organizations are engaged in diplomatic efforts to bring the fighting to an end. The United States, France, and Egypt are among those actively involved in seeking a resolution. France and the United States are working together to broker a 21-day ceasefire between Hezbollah and Israel. The goal is to create a window for broader negotiations. However, achieving a lasting ceasefire has proven elusive. Both sides have violated previous agreements. Lebanon's Prime Minister has accused Israel of violating Lebanese sovereignty. He has called for an immediate ceasefire and a withdrawal of Israeli forces. The United States, while supporting Israel's right to self-defense, is also urging restraint and a diplomatic solution. Israel maintains that it does not seek a full-scale war. However, it insists that it will continue to defend itself against attacks. Israel blames Iran for fueling regional instability by supporting groups like Hamas and Hezbollah. Section 8. A turning point for Israel. The current crisis may represent a turning point for Israel. The conflict has exposed the limitations of its traditional security doctrine. The country's People's Army concept, based on a strong reserve force, is in jeopardy. The psychological toll on the population is immense. The conflict has also deepened political and social divisions within Israel. The country is grappling with fundamental questions about its identity and its future. The outcome of this crisis will have profound implications for Israel's future as a state, a democracy, and a cohesive society. The very notion of Israel as a haven for Jewish people is being challenged. The conflict has led to soul-searching among Israelis. Many are questioning the sustainability of the current trajectory. The calls for a more sustainable and peaceful future are growing louder. The international community is watching closely. The conflict has damaged Israel's reputation. The country's standing in the world is diminished. The path ahead is fraught with uncertainty. The choices that Israel makes in the coming months and years will be crucial. Section 9. An uncertain future. Israel faces an uncertain future. The country is at a crossroads. The path it chooses will determine its destiny. Will it continue down a road of perpetual conflict, or will it find a way to make peace with its neighbors and build a more hopeful future for its citizens? The challenges are immense, but so too are the opportunities. Israel has the potential to be a beacon of hope and progress in the Middle East, but to realize this potential, it must find a way to end the cycle of violence and create a more just and equitable society for all. The world is watching and waiting. The time for action is now. The future of Israel hangs in the balance.